we'll get going. So we usually open the floor and let people talk as the Spirit moves. Um, does anyone have any success, something that your parish has been doing to help reach out to your community that you'd like to share with the group? Did everybody speak at once? Anyone have? Yeah, and if
At
there's
Holy
not, yeah,
Holy
go ahead.
Trinity, we're still working with the local food bank to try and have parishioners donate food, and then it's a very senior population that volunteers there. So we've also tried to reach out with some um, persons, younger persons, youth or parents to help with buying the food because the majority of persons, which is nice, are making financial donations, and so that food has to then go and be bought and then stocked in order to be given out. And so we're trying to help with that so that it's not just the people working there that are trying to get an inordinate amount of work done. But beyond that, we are struggling a little bit. Our calls mainly go around what we can't do as opposed to what we can do. So I was, again, hoping to still get some more ideas or just a feel from around the state that if anybody
I think you broke up a little bit there at the
some of them more
end.
paralyzed to bring
Yeah,
anyone together. Yeah. We
awesome.
have been helping with the Seneca, a couple people with the Seneca. We had tornadoes up in this area, so we've had a few members that have been able to contribute their time to go up and help move trees and cut up trees and limbs and everything.
That's great. Um, I thought I heard that Holy Trinity was housing a group that came in for tornado relief, or did I make that up?
You heard that, but then it fell apart on the other. We had the space, but I think they deemed that they were too large of a group for the space that we had, and so they didn't end up coming to use it at all. I don't know why they couldn't break it up,
Gotcha.
but anyway, but yes, it was definitely an idea.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank y'all for what you're doing. And from the one-off conversations I've had with folks, a lot of people are in those same boats. Is they're
So,
just
so
trying to go ahead.
So no one is using even safely using masks and distancing as much as possible, utilizing their kitchens or anything to try and provide food.
Not some. I haven't heard of the kitchen. I do know that Trinity Cathedral is using their kitchen. They have, or they were. They might have switched to an outside caterer actually. Um,
I'm pretty sure that St. Thaddeus is still doing a soup kitchen type deal, but it's all it's to go. It's everything's to go,
Of
yeah.
and
course.
we're we St. Augustine of Canterbury does the fifth Saturday, so we're basically a quarter, 4 times a year, and ours will be in May. And actually, Grant had sent an email out to folk. He's on my blast. I'm on his blast, and they're requesting parishioners to donate food because he's concerned about the short, and I think we all should be at a certain level about the food chain as far as this. We're going to have breaks in it as far as poultry or meat. So I'm going to be talking with him as we get into May to make sure that we're still be on, and B, how we do that. So, and I will say, as far as us, the other outreach piece we did, we also had tornadoes in our county, and that was uh, mercifully nothing bad in Aiken proper, but we ended up one of our parishioners' daughter runs a horse farm, and so she called me Easter Monday at 8 o'clock saying, "Can you get some folks to come over here and clean out some paddocks?" And had about 5 people do it, and 2 of them, I was surprised they were there. They wore masks. The rest of us didn't, and we somewhat socially maintained our distance.
So St. Thaddeus, they coordinate the soup kitchen, is that right? And then other people come in to help.
It's Yes,
weekly?
it's in
Okay.
there. It's in house for them,
Yeah.
and they. I mean, I have another parishioner who helps with us quarterly, but she does the fourth Saturday because she likes those people, and it's like a bunch of golfing people. So who may be St. Thaddeus and maybe some St. Mary's Roman Catholic.
Okay.
So I need to find that email. I'll
Yeah.
forward it to you just as FYI.
Yeah, that's great. And then I'll have Courtney follow up, because another thing we're doing is we're trying to do stories for our email newsletter and our blog to get out there to help spur ideas and let folks know what we're still doing. Last week we did one on St. Luke's in Columbia, their Fresh Start. They do a Thursday. Um, Normally it's kind of a full service. There's a food pantry, there's laundry, there's a clothes closet, there's they help people find medical and dental support and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's been scaled back except for the food pantry. So they're still providing to go. It used to be people could come in and kind of select things a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Now everything's prepackaged and they hand it to them, just to help keep it safe. And then um, every other Saturday, I think, at some interval on Saturday, they do a more traditional feeding program. Last week, this past weekend, they had that. The food was prepared at St. Martin's, but it was pre-packaged, I believe. There was no cooking on site. And they had 6 or 7 parishioners, socially distanced, mask and gloves, packing and assembling to go, styrofoam containers that they then took to St. Luke's and they handed out. Trinity does their Sunday morning breakfast, feeding breakfast. That's still continuing. Last I heard from Dorian, they had switched to an outside caterer that was preparing things in their kitchen and then bringing it to the cathedral for distribution. Same thing, to go. But I'll follow up with St. Thaddeus to see how they're using their kitchen and see if we can't share that story.
Okay, I
Yeah,
just
there was
emailed it
some.
to you.
Okay, thanks. Because there was some question. Mitch Smith, the rector at St. Martin's, had emailed because it was their turn in the rotation for St. Luke's to help, and he wanted some clarification about people can't gather for worship. Can we do this? So we went back through, Bishop Waldo's original guidance, kind of put feeding ministries in the essential services class, to where, vestry meetings can move online, formation can move online, you can't feed people over Zoom. And so we've provided CDC guidance and some guidance from Harvest Hope, the Columbia Food Insecurity Organization, about, how to maintain cleanliness and distance, and all that's on our website for some guidance there. And so St. Martin's did step up and take their turn this week, and going to continue to do that. So that's how I've seen feeding ministries pivot, is that apparently there is some food prep going on, probably in a limited capacity, less hands in the kitchen, gloves and masks and all of that. But the preparation or the delivery of it is, that I've seen, and what I've seen all the recommendations, is purely to go. If someone prepares it, it's then packaged, and not people coming in, even into the place. I don't know how St. Thaddeus is handling it, but it's more of a prep and then give out. Say more about you mentioned trying to get younger folks to go purchase groceries. This is for Holy Trinity. Is that for like older parishioners who don't feel comfortable going to the store, can't go to the store, trying to connect them with younger folks? What does that look like in practice?
Oh, it's with the food bank.
Oh, okay.
So the food bank is getting donations, and so we are going to the store and getting the the food to then take back to the food bank that then gets distributed by them. It's the
Okay.
volunteers at the food bank are senior persons who are and don't work during the day and can volunteer the whole day at the food pantry.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, I think that's a great thing to do for folks that just having the ability to go out and shop right now is an asset and a resource that some people can provide. I've heard of other congregations that are trying to connect parishioners, not necessarily even food insecure parishioners,
Right.
but parishioners who, like my mom is, almost 80. She lives by herself. She can't go to the grocery store all the time. And so someone from our Lutheran church in Fort Worth gets a shopping list and goes and picks things up.
So we have been doing that as well. So we're small enough to where the vestry was able to break down the parish list and contact the people weeks ago to see what they needed. We found a very few that actually needed anything, but it's mainly us in the parish that are kind of doing that nice effort. But people are going to the store for people. But we haven't come up with any other interaction, again, because like I said, everyone is literally not any type of contact whatsoever. They don't even want anything dropped off. We thought about, each of the kids at their own home could make some things and drop them off, but I can't really find that there's a interest in even touching something that's been made by somebody else. I'm serious that's like where we are. So a little frustrating for me, but I'm coming at it from a different standpoint than maybe they are.
Yeah, no, I get it. There was someone from last time on Good Shepherd Greer. Someone from Good Shepherd Greer was talking about how their sewing ministry or knitting, the people that make baby blankets or whatever, they pivoted to start making masks. I've seen other congregations doing that to give away, to parishioners or others in the community.
Right.
And there's been some healthcare providers that have asked for that.
Oh.
There, some hospitals and healthcare systems are strictly sticking to N95 and it has to be whatever. Others I've seen are saying at this point we'll kind of take whatever we can get. So that's going to depend on the locality and the organization. David, you unmuted. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was actually going to expand the efforts at Holy Trinity a bit. With the outreach committee, Earl and others are pushing to really to better understand what are we doing as a community, and how do we actually identify the needs versus the resources. And so we can talk about the kind of individual needs and what we're doing as a parish, but the other question is just what are the needs in community, and how do we better organize what we have. And we typically we're operating within our own little circles, but the reality is that how do we actually affect and better engage with the community. What I'm really looking for is, do we have best practices? I know that last time we reviewed kind of our asset model within the diocese, but how do we actually go through, and if we're working within a tight-knit community across faith-based organizations or non-faith-based, how do we understand what needs are versus what resources, and how do we kind of shuffle those and make those happen? And that also ties into some other discussions where we're seeing some communities that, for example, have homeless populations and others that don't. And one of the questions that have come up is, well, why do some communities not have homeless? What are they doing differently that's created that environment? And then what is missing in the communities where we do have homeless? So one is looking at the model, but we're also now looking at what's missing in certain communities. And I really like the whole concept of communities that are self-organizing and helping themselves, because literally at a national level, we need more of that. And I know that COVID-19 is kind of thrown a wrench into things, but what we've got to do is break away from the model where for years, many people have been reliant on, for example, FEMA to come in and fix things. We can't do that. We've got to figure out how do we handle things locally and then reach back to them when bad things happen. So.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. My experience, ERD, Episcopal Relief and Development, works along those models as well. They're not coming in with trucks and things like Red Cross or FEMA does, but they help identify kind of those self-organizing local communities, even smaller than a diocesan level, but at the parish level, is what is St. Augustine's Canterbury doing in tornado relief, and can we help support that? Frankly, we don't have models on a diocesan-wide scale. That's something we need to get into place, and we just haven't.
Well, what I'm really wondering is, and it doesn't necessarily that EDUSC has to be responsible for it, but of all the parishes that we have out there, do we have a good working model? Do we have one that we can say is a best practice for us to basically document, what did they do right? I mean, most of the time we talk about what went wrong, but I would love to find a situation where we could talk about what we did right. And if there is a good working model out there, let's figure out how we can document that and spread that, because what I'm discovering, especially in this event, is which is very different than Katrina and other types of events like that, where you can point at the bad hurricane that came in and did something. This is more of the invisible enemy that's affecting us, and we're now scared of each other, and and we're even shunning assistance from each other, and it's very different than anything that we've ever dealt with before. But the reality is that we've got to figure out how do we self-organize and make things happen at the lowest common denominator, which is the community. And I mean, I know that we could talk about everyone's household, but everyone has different levels of preparedness. I would like to figure out how we actually better prepare as individuals and families. How do we better organize within our parishes or whatever the organizations are? But then how do we share that information amongst ourselves so that we can ebb and flow needs versus the resources that we have to help community, and really getting back to that community concept. And then you reach back to the county, then you reach back to the state, then you go to the federal level ultimately. But at the moment, we seem to be very isolated. We're not talking, and what we're missing is that common node within community. If we look at the national response framework, it really starts at the federal level, goes down to the state level, and then it will go down to the county level, to the EOCs, and then you may have municipalities. The problem is that level down, there's really no connectivity with the communities. I mean, there are individual resources that can be found with different organizations. There's VOAD that kind of does the job, but what I'm looking for is that what is that entity that kind of coordinates? And I know that Earl and some others here at Holy Trinity are actually canvassing and talking to the other churches. How are they organized? Whatever it may be. But it's from a community standpoint, how do we create that node? And who is that? Who owns that node? And who operates that node? And that's much more strategic, but I think it is valuable.
Yeah, it absolutely
David,
is.
Would a United Way, would that be a kind of a starting point? Because it's kind of a clearinghouse from local nonprofits that also get their money. I mean, that might be a place that you could start, because they would probably do list out who the nonprofits are and what they can do.
Right.
I mean, that's the thought.
Yeah. So United Way is one, and they have I hate to call it a product, an offering. How about that? Which is called 211. And 211 actually is kind of that clearinghouse, I'm going to say by county, where you can actually go in there and understand all the different entities that are out there, how they work together. And really depends on county by county, and it's almost personality driven as far as how effective they are. But in Anderson County, which is just south of us, they've actually created a new group which is called the Anderson Resource Guide, and they do a very good job as far as facilitating and trying to pull together the right folks. And And my only concern about things that are personality driven, when that individual goes away, you're kind of back to square one. And I'm trying to figure out how do you institutionalize that support. And I think 211 is a good format, but we've got to figure out how do we take that to the next level?
Anything in Pickens County government, maybe like the sheriff's office or some type of human services division for the county?
That's what I'm digging into right now to figure out who that is. And my problem is that during an emergency, you have VOAD, which is Volunteers Active in Disasters. Okay. And that's a national program, which is a decent program. The problem is that they jump up and they're operational after disaster happens. This is something that needs to be operating day in and day out, 365 days a year. And so that's where I'm trying to figure out who should that be? And actually, if we can figure out what that needs to be, figure out how we actually push that at a national level. So, but we first got to start with a good working model.
Yeah. Margaret Jennings Todd just hopped on, and it made me think. One thing Episcopal Relief and Development is attempting to do is get liaisons, for lack of a better term, in every congregation. So Margaret Jennings Todd serves as our diocesan ERD officer, whatever I forget your title, so coordinator, I think, whatever it is, poobah. And so the idea is that then every parish would identify someone who would be a conduit of information, resource sharing, ideas, all of these. And so Margaret would kind of work with potentially 60 people to say, hey, St. Augustine's of Canterbury has been doing this. This is a good idea. And so Holy Trinity could try. Or we have these things that we can take from your place to our place, to build this resource sharing network. Part of it is that online asset map that we looked at last time, but part of it is this person. We've been trying, I think, for 5 or 6 years in this diocese to get people to identify and to sign up for that. And it's just as difficult as getting someone to teach 4-year-old Sunday school. Right? And so part of it is just a human resources issue is, we can get clergy to tell us only so much. But clergy are not always the most responsive people in the world. Not you, Dan, you're fine. And Tom, you're on here too. But so part of it is just a lack of people in those roles. Margaret is getting up to speed, and she's been in her role for like 5 minutes. And she's been foisted into the middle of this. But my hope is that we can build that system. Right, and that can help us at some level share these resources, both diocesan-wide. They're called network members in ERD parlance. They're invited, I think, to regional gatherings, and so then it's region-wide. Our diocese and the Carolina dioceses or something. There's supposed to be a thing at Canuga, and then there's a national network member organization that can help share resources and ideas. So that's something I hope we start to work toward, but it's been like pulling teeth. Yeah, Margaret, you were going to say something?
Yeah, and I need to plug up my computer. It just yelled at me. But I just got a network list. It's very, very outdated. So I'm going to be contacting the rectors and vicars about updating that list.
Yeah, and hopefully this current situation will prompt people to say, this is actually something we need. It's a way to identify people who have a different skill set. And what this person is a conduit. It's helping connect Holy Trinity's Mission and Outreach Committee with resources at Diocesan House or resources, at St. Albans or wherever. So that's the system that's in place that just needs to be improved upon and built out. So on a diocesan and regional and national church level, we're trying to plug into that. Every diocese has the same struggles. When I was in the Diocese of Texas, my parish neighborhood flooded 3 times in 5 years, and we did not have an ERD network member, right? Because everyone's so busy with real life that you can't. And so it's not just a South Carolina problem. It's kind of why VOAD, like I'm on those VOAD calls every day, and sometimes they're helpful, and sometimes it's, I just got appointed to be on this call and I don't know what to say. And so the person from, whatever organization can't really contribute because they were just their straw was drawn. So hopefully that's something we can build up to help us coordinate that communication and start to build that list. We can have some trainings about how these network members can help share resources. One thing that I want to come out of that is every parish start to work on a disaster plan. Not just the disaster plan for when, hurricane season comes around, but a disaster plan for what do we do when the rector gets COVID-21 in 2 years? Or what do we do when there's an active shooter? Or what do we do, a disaster plan that's broad enough. I think some parishes have them. I've talked with some folks in the last couple of weeks that are working on them now. As they're living it, they're trying to jot down what they're doing. But I think that's a way that it can help what you talked about, David, with the personality. Someone might have a great ERD network member that just does everything because that's what they are, and then that person moves to Wyoming. But if we have a disaster plan, and maybe that's not the right word, but a contingency plan that has a model that they can follow so that when the next person comes into that role, they can say, oh, when something's happening, here's a list of phone numbers I can call. Here's the person down the street that has a walk-in freezer, here, whatever it is.
Well, no, I mean, disaster management and business continuity plan is probably the terms I would use. And actually, I found some good examples to be used that have been used in other parishes around the country. And to be quite honest, that might not be a bad idea, because if we actually leverage that plan, we can talk about other resources in the area and other networks. And even though we may have named positions now, if they're using the plan as you are changing up names over time for different positions, you can actually update that plan accordingly, and then those people would be connected. So no, maybe that is the tool that basically helps institutionalize this type of effort.
Yeah, that's the hope. Would you mind sharing, because I'm collecting these disaster plans that I find.
Yeah.
Would you mind passing those along? Just to
no problem at all.
To the library. Cool. That's a fun conversation. Let's talk about how to plan for the worst.
There's also on ERD's website, they had varying base level type planning. And all this was jarring my memory from when I was at the cathedral in Mobile. I was like, oh, I think we did one of those. So, but that might be helpful, and it can be tailored to a larger congregation or a smaller congregation.
Yeah, they've got, I think, 3 tiers. One is we're just trying to get something on paper right now, and the last one is we're going to do a full-blown, simulation type disaster plan. And as parishes want to do that, I can help walk through those. We have a great relationship with the folks at Episcopal Relief and Development. Their U.S. disaster team can help walk us through. My goal is to have a conversation, have some kind of offering for the diocese. Not right now because we're all in the thick of it, but at some point with ERD's U.S. disaster team about exactly that. Is have them talk about what they provide, what they've seen from other folks, and how parishes can start to do this on their own. Hopefully that'll come after Margaret gets a better handle on who the network members are, and we have some people in place. But I think your encouragement, David, and the ideas here can help spur that along.
Yeah, just recently, I had to write a chapter in a book for the American Bar Association on community resilience, and when it came down to preparedness and planning activities, I think I've got 3 sentences that I included in there on that subject, and it really is to follow NFPA 1600, which is a document created that is probably the most inclusive document I found as far as how do you actually plan, because it marries up disaster management and business continuity together. And that's really what we're talking about in the end. And there's no reason for me, that document is so thorough, there's no reason for me to even comment other than the fact to say, just go do this. But one thing is ultimately is what I'm trying to do, and this will take me some time with the university, but if we are going to have students engaged on projects, what I'd like to do is ultimately, the first thing everyone asks for is assistance with grant writing. Students are not the best tool in the world to do grant writing, but the point is they can be free labor. And if we put a structure around them, hopefully they can help do that. They may be more qualified than some of the individuals that we're working with. But the other part is I'd like to figure out is, how can we actually utilize those types of resources to help organizations draft these plans, and walk them through and ask those questions. And so if we can actually create a format to do that, that could be a benefit as well, because ultimately, if we can end up with communities that are resilient, which means that each entity, individual, organization, whatever it is, understands how to deal with the situation and you self-organize, when bad things happen, everyone just stands up and makes things happen. So
so that leads me, we need to wrap up here in a minute, but this has been a fruitful conversation, I think. To help fill out the asset map a couple years ago, we hired an intern, a college student. I wasn't here. Jimmy can talk more about that. I wonder if there could be an opportunity for service learning, maybe working through, I don't know who would do it, but if there's folks that have some expertise in planning, that we could hire an intern or two to work with congregations. We'd have to find the money. We can worry about that later, but maybe David, you could help us identify people at Clemson or wherever
Absolutely.
who could go into a congregation and say, let's figure this out. And we have a model, and it's real life experience for them. I'd love to explore that going forward.
So let me ask a harder question. Is that so at the state, at the diocese level, how much reach across do you have to other faith-based organizations? In other words, what if we were to do this at a state level? So one is 100% agree with you, but also could we do this across other, for the Baptist and Methodist and Presbyterians?
Yeah, so there are a couple organizations. There's the South Carolina Christian Action Council, and Margaret's on that. I don't know if this is something that I'm just thinking of statewide organizations of which we're a part. There's Fellowship of South Carolina Bishops. Those are, all the liturgical bishops, Methodist, Roman Catholic, Lutheran, all of those. That organization I could see, we have good relationships with those groups, the other kind of, mainline Protestant organizations. For Baptist, I'm friends with their mission and outreach guy for the Baptist Convention in South Carolina, and so that could be me picking up a phone and talking to him, saying, "Hey, So there's not as much structure around. There's not really a functioning South Carolina Council of Churches, at least that I'm aware of, anything like that. But based on relationship, we might be able to build somewhat of a network for that. If we were to trial it and say, hey, here's where we can do it, and then we offer up the model to others. I mean, that's an opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. I'll draft a scope as far as what I think that would be, and I'll also send you these documents I promised.
That's perfect. Anything else in our last kind of 5 minutes here? Any other questions, roadblocks you're running into? Anything else that's working really well?
Hanging in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's all we're doing. And one of the things that I'm wondering is if, you've heard people talk about Zoom brain and how, like, just the fact of staring at screens all day makes your brain not function as clearly. And in the midst of all this, right, everyone's doing the best they can. And if we can figure out one thing to do, if we can figure out how to have folks buy groceries for the food bank, I mean, that's great work, and that's what we're doing. And unprecedented times, and we're trying to figure it out.
Alan, I'm
Yeah.
sorry I was late coming on, but did y'all talk about the virtual food bank through Harvest Hope?
No.
We're doing that at St. Timothy's, and literally it's it actually went up today, and so you sign up, send them your logo, and they post it, and then you post the link on your in your bulletin or on your virtual messenger, and then people can just hit that link and donate money for food, and it goes.
I hadn't heard of that.
Credits. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that, and so I'll find some information about that, and we can.
That's a really good, a very good resource.
Yeah, and I'll have Courtney get in touch with Alice, do a little thing about it. This is the first I've heard of it.
I'll just send you right now the
perfect.
the contact.
Perfect. And then we'll share that with. Is Harvest Hope? That's just the Midlands, or is that a statewide?
Well, it's primarily the Midlands, but they do statewide work.
Okay. Okay, I'll look into that.
But I'm doing the contact with that for St. Timothy, so if you need a question about it. But I'll send this to you right now.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I may have Courtney reach out to you for some quotes and stuff for us to get out there.
I mean, it's really easy. You just need the time you're going to have it, the goal that you have set for the parish, for the amount of money, and they like a logo so people can have a visual image.
Sure. No, that's great. Thank you for that. I got that down. Yeah, if there's nothing else, we can wrap up. And the next call, what's next, Jimmy? Next is worship, I think, at 11 o'clock. So some of y'all may log off of this and log back onto that one for more exciting conversations. Worship will probably have a lot more questions that I'm not able to answer because decisions need to be made from on high. So this is sometimes a more fun conversation. Thank you all for your time. Thank you all for the work that y'all are doing.
Thank you, Alan. God bless you. Thank you, Jimmy. Y'all be safe.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. See y'all later.
Bye.